Hi guys, welcome back. It's Ian from Signal Centre, and this is the DeMark Part 2 webinar for today. So yesterday we did, one second. This is the DeMark Part 2 webinar for today. That was annoying. Do apologise. Yes, so this is DeMark Part 2. Yesterday we talked about the basics of DeMark. We talked about the buy and sell setup. We talked about TD sequential, 13 counts, 9 counts, etc. Today we're going to concentrate on the other subjects, or some of the other subjects that we didn't concentrate on yesterday. So we're going to have a quick refresher on the 9 count. What is the 9 count? Remember yesterday I turned around and said that most traders or most analysts that use the DeMark indicators look for 13 counts. Okay, so 9 counts are normally corrections, 13 counts are normally exhaustion. So obviously we want to be, or most people want to look for the top or the bottom of trends and don't want to trade the corrective patterns in between. However, we're not talking about 13s today. We're talking about 9s. We're going back to 9s. We're going back to the setup. We're going to refresh about that. Then we're going to talk about the perfected TD9, what that means. Okay. We're also going to talk about the TDST. Now, these are just names given to obviously technical elements inside TD. Don't get carried away. It's not that complicated. Like I was saying yesterday, we haven't got to manually plot all of these different numbers on a chart. All we've got to do is basically know what they mean and make sure really that we're not taking false trades, and that's what today's webinar is mainly about. So we're going to talk about TDST, we're going to talk about the perfected 9, and we're going to talk about consolidation or reversal. So like I said, just a quick refresher, it all starts with a flip. So yesterday we talked about the TD flip. So a TD flip is basically a candle close greater than the close of the candle 4 periods or bars earlier, immediately followed by the close less than the bar 4 bars earlier. So if you were here yesterday, we were saying that yes, 9s and 13s, 9s are corrective or possible reversal formations, 19s are exhaustion counts, but 2 other elements that are quite important in TD are the numbers 2 and the numbers 4, and here we've got the number 4. So basically this candle here has to close above the candle 4 candles back, 1, 2, 3, 4, and this candle here has to close below the candles 4 candles back. Lost my mouse then, 1, 2, 3, 4. So just drawn these lines on the chart so you can clearly see that that happens. Now I'm not going to keep on going over these different slides. So that was the bearish flip. This is a bullish flip, obviously the opposite of the bearish flip. And then we've got this setup. So this is the bearish flip, and we talked about this setup yesterday. And the reason that I'm repeating this is because it is important to know how the TD buy setup is completed. So a TD setup on a bearish, it starts with a bearish flip, then must be then 9 consecutive closes, each one less than the close 4 bars earlier. If at any point the sequence breaks, then the count stops, okay, and you have to start again. Once the TD setup is successful and it reaches 9, the first phase of the TD sequential is complete. Now, that's important, and that's why I've repeated this today. Because remember what we were saying yesterday in the webinar is that you get to the 9 count, and then what happens? Well, you get to the 9 count, small correction, and then we get a 13 count, and that's where we want to trade. But that doesn't always happen, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So we can talk about actually trading the 9s and not the 13s, okay? Because remember we said in one of the titles there, reversal or consolidation. A lot of the time it's consolidation, quite a lot of the time it's reversal. So that's the rules. We went through that yesterday. I'm not going to go through that again today. And then that's obviously the opposite. That's the bullish count after a TD buy setup, the flip, TD buy setup, and then we move to the upside. Now that I would call a change of trend, not a correction. So that chart there is quite clearly highlighting that we can get changes of trends from 9s, not just corrections. So the prerequisite for a TD sell setup and the TD price flip indicates a switch from negative to positive. So there's the switch, okay, from negative to positive, and there's the setup. So we're going to get off those, and we're going to get onto the perfected 9 count. So a TD buy setup perfection is the prerequisite for entering a long position based on a completed TD buy setup, right? So basically, just because we've seen a 9, so the market has moved to the downside, we've seen a 9 count, do we automatically buy it? No, is the answer. There's 2 factors which we're going to talk about today on whether or not that trend, that 9 count that's moved to the downside, is that trend strong? Is it going to continue? Or is it quite a weak 9 count and we're going to get a trend reversal? And that's what we're talking about. So there's 2 different factors that go into this. First is the perfection. So the TD buy setup perfection, the low of bar 8 or 9 of the TD buy setup must be less than or equal to the lows of bar 6 and 7. Now, this is something that you have to do manually because it doesn't tell you when you've got a perfected 9. So you do need to keep an eye on the counts when you see them. So the first one that I'm going to put on the slides is a perfected 9. So here we've had the flip. So the price has moved from bullish to bearish. That close is higher than the close 4 bars earlier. I can see that quite clearly. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and this close here is lower than the bar 4 bars earlier. But I don't need to know that because I've seen a 1 anyway, so I know that that has completed that scenario. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there's the flip, and then we get these consecutive moves lower until we get the 9. Now here we've got a perfected 9 because we've got I've just drawn these lines across the chart of the low point, and it is the low point, not the close. Okay, so it's the low point of the 6, 7, 8, 9, and they're all in sequence. They don't have to all be in sequence, as it said, as we said previously, but you really want the 8 and the 9 below the 6 and 7. Okay, so that's a perfected buy setup. Now that means that that's a good signal for at least a correction to the upside. Here is an unperfected sell setup. So as you can see, the 6 is quite clearly the top candle. The 7 is the middle candle, or the second to third to lowest candle. Then the 8, and then the 9. So the 9 is the lowest. So you can clearly see here that that's an unperfected sell setup as far as TD sell setups are concerned. So you would not take that trade if you were sticking to the rules. Okay, so the TD setup as an indicator, okay, determines whether a market is likely to be confined to a trading range or start a directional trend, a new directional trend. Okay, so are we just going to move sideways, maybe small consolidation, or are we going to change trends completely? Okay, so the TDST I've put on here, the consolidation or reversal. If a price fails to record a close beyond, I should say, the absolute high or low of the most recently completed TD setup in the opposite direction, that is the TDST, up to and including the completion of bar 9 of the current active TD setup, then the market is deemed to have insufficient momentum to break out of that range. Now, it might sound like a lot of old waffle, basically, but it's not, and it's quite easy, again, to plot on the charts. These lines are put on for us. But what is important here is that we've talked about momentum, and also I'm going to talk, when I go to the chart, I'm going to briefly talk about the TDST lines, because they are unique in their own formation. And here is the first line. Okay, so that's the flip there's the confirmed flip. That is your TDST line. Okay, so that's a unique resistance line. If we were using normal swing highs, swing lows, then our resistance would be here above the 3, but it's not. It's here, because that is the confirmed price flip as far as DeMark is concerned. Now, a lot of the time, and I do mean quite a lot of the time, we will come up to these levels and we will reject these levels. We won't reject the high, we'll actually reject the TDST level, and then we'll move to the downside. Now here, you can see that momentum is strong in this downward count. Okay, then we get the buy set up, we move higher, and this is a sell setup, a perfected sell setup. So you've got a perfected buy setup and you've got a perfected sell setup, but it's below the TDST. So that is saying to us that that is a good opportunity to sell this product, because the momentum is weak. So strong momentum, weak momentum. It's taken, it's put in a 9 count, but it hasn't been able to break this trend, and that's the trend there. So a perfected 9 below the previous TDST is a good indication that that trend is not going to continue, and in fact we're going to resume the trend to the downside. So if price, this is the breakout or the extension, if price exceeds the extreme absolute high or low of the previous TD setup, the TDST, in the opposite direction on a closing basis, then the market is deemed to have sufficient momentum to facilitate a sustained breakout of the range. Okay, so what we're looking at here, what DeMark has done, he's basically highlighted, without having to put momentum indicators on the chart, he's highlighted whether or not the waves, if you like, and he does do an Elliott wave, or he has an Elliott wave, a form of Elliott wave called a D wave. So he's highlighting whether or not those waves are corrective or impulsive. So if you think about Elliott waves just briefly here, impulse wave 1, wave 2 isn't impulsive, and it's unlikely that that wave 2 to the downside will probably break the TDST, and then 3 is impulsive, 4 is corrective, unlikely to break the TDST, then 5 is impulsive, but then you get the A, B, C, D, and they are likely to break. You see what I mean? So we've got, there's a method behind the madness, and overlaying it on Elliott wave can be quite good. If we go to this chart, so this is what we're talking about, a TDST breakout of the extension. So here is our, well, there's our price flip, but remember the TDST, the support level is taken from the lowest candle, from the low of the lowest candle in that setup. So this is the low of the lowest candle. Then we get perfected 9 to the upside, and then we get this strong sell-off, and we've got a perfected 9 down here, but it's broken that support level. And because it's broken that support level, it shows that instead of the momentum to the upside being strong, even though it is pretty strong, the momentum to the downside is stronger, and it's likely that that sell-off will continue to move to the downside. And if we go to the next chart, okay, that was the TDST, there's your 9 count, okay, broke lower, had a small correction, and then broke even further to the downside. So these levels, the TDST levels act as support and resistance. If support or resistance is broken, by the time you get the next 9 count, then that is likely to continue that new trend. If it isn't broken, the TDST level, we've perfected a 9, then the trend is likely to continue in the same direction as the original count. Okay, I hope that all made sense. Hope it's not too complicated. Like I said, you can get these the indicators on your chart. Have a look, break down time frames. You know, was it a trend resistance level that we saw a 13 count going back to yesterday? You know, can we plot an Elliott wave formation to the downside? Look for your TDST levels, etc. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed that analytical webinar. We'll be back again soon with some more. Thanks again. Bye for now.